You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
Dr. Steve Pieczenik, always interesting, always informative. Formerly with the State Department, one of the guys that founded Delta Force with General Boykin and Schumacher, and of course worked with different agencies. He's going to ride shotgun with us. So much to cover, so much to happen, so much going on. But whenever I saw Trump on Wednesday with the tweet about our missiles are coming, they're so good, they're so amazing, they're so high-tech, horrible, murdering animal Assad, the last 3 chemical attacks were false flags. Even our own Pentagon and UN admitted that. Now as the Russians are pulling out and Trump announces he wants to pull out in countervalence of what the deep state wants, within 6 days this happens, and then we're supposed to rush to it. But then Mattis yesterday came out and said, no, we don't have any evidence it was Assad. Dr. Pieczenik, where are we as a republic right now with all your great sources on what's going on? StevePieczenik.com is the website.
Overall, the deep state, the republic is fine because the republic people are working, the unemployment is low, the economy is going up. Unfortunately, the stock market is what we call a lead in the newspaper market. In other words, it's reacting every time to the false news that's coming out. In terms of Comey, in terms of Mueller, those people will either be fired or they eventually become irrelevant. What is wonderful about what happened, including all of the people on your show and otherwise, is that Mattis and others came forth and said, look, this is a false flag. We've had British, American, and French troops in Syria for quite a while. We did have it in exchange between the Russians and the Americans. Some were hurt. The issue about Djibouti, where the planes were crashing, was really a cover-up for, unfortunately, the brave warriors who died in Syria. We're not interested in going into war, thanks to Mattis, who understands very well that war is not the solution for this, as does Trump. Trump is really just twittering all of the aspects in terms of the fact that he's threatening and putting a position in where he's putting Putin and he's putting the mullahs on notice, but is he in fact going to go into war? I think not. Ironically, with John Bolton there, who you would think would promote war, I think he has become somewhat more acquiescent to the demands of a greater general like Mattis. Mattis knows exactly what generals have to do in order to go to war. They know very well that war is not the solution. And when you have a false flag, which was initiated by the Israelis, once again, this is the way a dependent country, which acts like a teenager for the most part, wants to bring the United States back into the Middle East, when in fact the United States has no national security interest whatsoever in the Middle East. Thanks to Trump, we are now an exporter of oil. Anytime we have a strategic reserve depletion, we can fill it up in 3 or 4 days.
Well, I want to go back to that, but since you mention it, Brennan has called Trump a cachristocracy, which means a corrupt, inept government. But actually, you look at all the real indicators, the country, everything's turning around. I agree. Trump, just like on DACA or just like on the guns, he says one thing to get the Hawks off his back. I think Putin knew that was, cartoonish on purpose, but then had no intention of actually striking Russian forces again that could lead us to World War III. But again, the boldness of the deep state stay-behinds, telling Trump shut his mouth like Brennan did the first week when Trump was in the White House, couldn't believe Trump fired him. I mean, what is going on with Brennan and Clapper? They seem completely delusional.
Well, they're not delusional. It's exactly what you and I talked about 13, 14 years ago. I have no respect for Brennan. Brennan is one of the most pathetic, incompetent, corrupt DCIs. He did not start as a DDO, a covert operative. Instead, he sucked his way up to the political system. He may have converted to Islam and was a disaster. The reason he could come up with the system of the CIA is that nobody stopped him. He was an absolute disaster in Saudi Arabia. He was a disaster under the Bush and Clinton administration. He should be put in prison. I've said it for a long time. Hayden is the same way, and so is the other one.
So let's explain it. They're a bunch of lip-wristed fraud sycophants that can't even tie their shoelaces and have never done anything for the country, but have been put in there because they're political traitors.
Correct, but they're not limp-wristed. These are real criminals. This is where you need to have an FBI director and an attorney general that is not Mueller, that is not Comey.
So you're saying they have real criminal energy?
This is criminal. There's no question that Brennan is a criminal. He initiated 9/11. He worked with Bush on 9/11. He worked with Cheney on 9/11. He worked with Burns on 9/11. There's no question this man's an idiot. I've known him. I've known all about him for years to come, and the CIA should have thrown him out a long time ago.
And when you talk to those generals, when we had you on, right after 9/11, back when you were in the Council on Foreign Relations, of course, you co-wrote Clancy's books, folks that know who you are. I mean, the generals are all very open about the stand down, all of the 28 pages. We knew about that 16, 17 years ago. We've been vindicated. And so I guess our military's been simmering under the surface, really upset about this for a while.
Well, I know you don't like to hear what I'm about to say. Thanks to you and your audience, our military has been simmering since about 2002 and 3. There have been incredible generals, including General Boykin, Keith Alexander, and a whole group of them who began to understand that they were being coerced or usurped by these neocon cowards who are basically...
Who are actually going to double-cross us with radical Islam in the final game, and it's incredible.
It's exactly what happened. Saudi Arabia, Israel now are involved in the same false flag that they were involved in 9/11. Instead of punishing Israel, getting rid of Bibi and bringing in a moderate, the Israeli people have done absolutely nothing but allowed their boys to die for nothing.
Well, I want to be clear, and I know you're part Jewish and your family died in the Holocaust and all of it, so you can specifically speak to this. I know you got your history. The whole thing is clear, though. Even the Russian ambassador to the EU, Russian ambassador to the UN, both said this is a false flag. Coalition forces in there trained him. But the Allah Akbar crowd that Saudi Arabia the first time gave the chemical mortars to, they want to be rock stars and get the millions of dollars for launching the attack. They videotaped it and Allah Akbar'd it. So the reason we know they stage it is they're so out of control. The Islamists don't even cover up they're doing it. So I'm not defending Israel, but I haven't been sure who was behind it. We just know it's a false flag because of motive and history and past action. I know you have great connections. We're going to go to break. When we come back, tell us who's telling you, Dr. Steve Pieczenik, that it was Israel did this. I know Israel's been meeting with the new prince and his whole PR campaign. They've been very close with these secret meetings, and I know Saudi Arabia doesn't want...
It's Israel that told me. Israel's behavior is so consistent, you can't avoid it. It was predictable.
Well, sure. In fact, guys, print me that zero ahead. 6 reasons Trump, they think, may hit Syria, because, I mean, it is true. Israel has an old beef with Syria. And so, yeah, this is something we have to look at. Steve Pieczenik, again, was a former head of psychological operations at the State Department and other positions. Really smart guy. He's been dead on. I've been interviewing him for, gosh, it's got to be 17 years, 16, 17 years. So I read like a Council on Foreign Relations transcript, so he was telling them they were all idiots, and then the 9/11 was a pretext to start all these wars. It was going to blow up in their face. But now we sit here and we see radical Islam openly allied with the left and the globalists to flood Europe. I want to ask him what the plan is with that, but we got cut off by the break when he was getting to a very, very important point. Let's go back to that.
Alex, basically what happens is very simple. I spent 3 weeks in Syria before the war broke out. I got to meet all the military people, the intelligence as well. They're not interested in a war with Israel. That's not their interest.
And you'd been there before. You were actually locked up by Assad's dad.
That's correct. I had no protection. They took me around for 17, 18 days, went to Latakia, Palmyra, Homs, Hamas. But I could see in Homs and Hamas that they were Sunni Muslim. You have a country that's ruled by Alawite. Alawite are minority Muslims. They're almost what we call light Muslims. And Bashar Assad, his father and his brothers...
So aren't they really just sheep-dipped Christians? Like they had to convert to Islam, but they're really not?
Well, I don't want to get into it. It's a form of Shiite Islam, but a very light form. And the French brought them in the 1920s. They were located in the mountains, so they brought them to a beautiful area on the Mediterranean, Latakia. So Macron knows the history of this country very well. The French know it. They know that Assad does not want to go to war. The problem is the
So aren't they basically like mystics? I mean, that particular group's more like mystics?
No, that would be a little bit more like the Sufi Muslims.
Sufis, yeah.
Those are the ones who are like, they will swirl around and they will kind of get lightheaded, and they're not ardent Muslims as much as they are metaphysicists. And Alawites are really very compassionate. Bashar takes care of the Jews, the Druze, the Christians, everyone else. I mean, it's amazing. Nobody understands that he is an ophthalmologist. He really isn't looking for trouble. When he wanted to stay in power, and I warned the Council on Foreign Relations, particularly these immature, ignorant CIA operatives do not go into into Syria. And of course, it was Hillary Clinton. It was the entire Obama administration went in without knowing exactly.
Yeah, their attempt to have an Arab Spring, bring it down and give it to the jihadis, blew up in their face. Now the Russians are pulling out. Why in Hades would the Russians or Assad, when they're winning, stage a chemical attack on civilians? That's the dumbest thing ever.
No, and that's the point. And also, I spent time in the Soviet Union. I did a regime change, but I also knew when Putin came in, the own KGB didn't know who Putin was. I explained it to them. He was an East German intelligence officer. He's very smart. He knows exactly how the agency works. He knows exactly the tactical and strategic elements of covert operation. He doesn't need this. They already had basically taken out in exchange of some of our special forces who unfortunately were killed. And that was covered by the issue of Djibouti airline. Our airplanes were shot down in Djibouti. That's not correct. The soldiers who were killed were brave warriors in the units in Syria. And then the person, I think, who was involved in the exchange would be Senator Duckworth, who was a brave heroine, still is, who lost her legs in the Iraq War, and I think she negotiated the release of our American Special Forces. In turn, the British were taken out, the Israeli pulled back, and the French have just stayed there. Usually,
sure, you're giving a whole history, but getting past that, we need to get to calls and a bunch of the big issues. Why the deep state is full-on raiding Trump Tower over a woman 11 years ago.
Correct.
Complete mission creep, totally illegal. All the lawyers, all the experts agree. They're cornered rats. They're totally rogue. This is dangerous. And I don't know how, under the Constitution, you name it, when the Communist Chinese and others are openly the only group funding the Democrats right now, from my information, Trump's cut off the Saudi funding, got them to, at least partially reform. What is going on with Trump right now? I mean, how much of this can be put up with?
Well, that's a good question. From my perspective, I think Trump is having a massive amount of input that he has to filter out very quickly. But there's one element about Trump that most people don't understand. The one thing Trump loves more than anything else is action and high-intensity decisions. The worst thing for Trump is really boredom. Nothing to do. So in a situation like
By the way,
this,
what you say from people I know about Trump, that's exactly it. He is super bored with just regular things. He likes super high-tension deals.
He's a businessman, and what he's doing now, he loves the input that's coming in from China, Russia, from Syria, from his military officers. And what he's going to do is the same thing he did in the business world. He's going to give to those people whom he trusts, in particular Mattis, you make the decision what we're going to do. In the meantime, I will Twitter, whatever it is, I will Twitter, and then the New York Times will call him imbecile, lazy, and stupid. It's the reverse. The man has basically said in the art of the deal, create uncertainty, create friction, create excitement, use the newspapers anytime you want. Because the left and the newspapers are lazy, they didn't even read the art.
Yeah, they're one dimension. They don't even read their enemy's own treatise, his whole worldview, because they're only one-dimensional about right now and trying to score a point. They don't get how they're playing into it. Why is the modern left so stupid?
Because they're arrogant. Arrogance leads to ignorance and self-destruction. I've seen this repeatedly, one after another. They don't learn the history. The one thing we Republicans have always done, we've concentrated on foreign policy, what our history is, what it wasn't. Even the people at the University of Chicago who were conservatives knew that December 7th was a false flag. Even though
they let it happen. Yeah, but let me ask you this. We got to go to break, go to calls. I promise I'm going to go right to Catherine and Caroline when we come back. I promise. Briefly, I'm not whining, but you talked to your sources when they had us kicked off YouTube. You said it's a coup d'etat inside there. It's a mutiny. It's going to be cleaned up in a few days. Geospatial Center runs it, NSA, which everybody knows. I tell reporters that they think I'm crazy. That's just a fact. It's in mainstream news.
Right.
And sure enough, it's taken them a month. They've turned everybody's channel back on. They had to go through it all. It's happened. So what's happening now with like this 15 lawsuits I'm under, which my lawyers admit are all fake. We're getting them overturned every week, but they just file more. They've got big ones I'm going to break that are going to be filed next week. I'll break it before they break them. I want people to know about this. What is this tactic?
Basically, they're harassing you. There's no way they can come in on you legitimately. Your lawyers will tell you there's no cause of action. The basic problem was that they wanted to take you down, and they tried it. Then what happened? Zuckerberg got called into Congress. Then what happened? YouTube was told to cease and desist. So was Google. And suddenly I got monetized. So will you. And I said to you, you will remain on the air. Whatever else they want to do, that's harassment. From my point of view, you're going to remain on. I just want you to take it easy, because this is part of the game that occurs when the left and the attackers have no more options. They're basically scattering it all over the field. They have nothing else.
You're talking about death throws, and we're not just saying that. These are flailing death throws.
That's correct. You're seeing the entity die, and they're trying to resuscitate through the midterms and bringing in other, Democrats. But basically, the Ryans and others who should never have been there in the first place really are leaving.
That's another question. Why is Ryan evacuating from your intel without Pieczenik? All this attention censorship, to me, just eyeballing it, looks like it blew up in their face worse. And even in their fake polls, Trump's even up more, and nationalists are winning everywhere, and populism's coming back, and the EU admits it's about to collapse. What's happened here? And why are they so obsessed with INFOWARS? Is it because you come on or others come on? Because to me, I don't think it's that big a deal.
Well, you are a big deal. The issue isn't that. You didn't start out with your grandiosity. You started out with the notion that, look, I'm going to say whatever I'm going to say, and I'm going to say it my way, not the New York Times way, not the New York Post. My way is Alex Jones' way. The two combination of a paradigm shift, you've got to understand what it is that we're doing. We have literally broken the narrative of the newspaper, the narrative of the three articles on the one subject. They don't know what to say. And you basically came in and said, look, I don't believe any of this. This is how I'm going to work it. I'm going to be spontaneous. I'm going to start riffing in my own mind, whatever words come to mind, and also be amusing about it. That was not conceivable. No one in the press could understand.
And by the way, even Colbert 2 weeks ago kind of slipped up, and he goes with his guest, he goes, INFOWARS is so bad because it's creating new narratives, and they both look scared. What are they scared of? These people are, you know what it is? They don't get to be their own men. They're told what to say.
Remember, when you're not your own man and you have your own business, this is why you attract and I attract entrepreneurs. We're not beholden to anybody. We're just beholden to ourselves. We make the mistakes. We fail. When you get a guy who's Colbert, comes out of the Stewart show or whatever, he's not really that funny. He thinks he's funny. And basically, he doesn't know what to say. He's paid $6 million to stand up there like a puppet to say what? Nobody's interested. Instead, we had a paradigm shift with a guy named Alex Jones from where? Austin, Texas? Well, Austin isn't New York. Austin isn't Los Angeles. Austin isn't Chicago. What in God's name is in Austin, Texas? So we have a different person, a different personality, a different format, a different location. Then you get a guy, his name is what? Dr. Steve who? Pieczenik? He left the Council on Foreign Relations because he was against the war in Syria and Iran and Iraq. I never heard of that. He was an anointed person, and then he left. And he's joining who? Alex Jones, and he's saying what? All of those elements combined created a combustion that basically the system can't contain. They don't understand it. And to this day, they still don't understand.
And they don't get that what you and I and many others did, we already detonated, and now the shockwaves are going out. We already sunk to the bottom. Even if they take us out, we already blew their operation. They don't get it. They think they can go back and attack the source of the detonation.
They can't get it because, as you said, we've already been decapitated. We've come back. We've said to them, if you pull this stuff again, we'll decapitate you. And by the way, they did. I'm sorry the lady had to kill people at YouTube, but basically that was the expression of frustration that was coming out against Google and YouTube. And when I warned the Soviet Jewish boy I took out of the Soviet Union, Bray, and he started to create his own gulag on YouTube and Google, that was a a warning to him. And ironically,
by the way, you're not just saying that. You said days before Bloomberg broke that there was a mutiny inside YouTube and Google, and they were going to fix it. Everything. You said that you knew that from the Geospatial Center. To tell us as much specifics as you can, because that's big.
Well, I don't want to get into the National Geospatial Agency. All I can tell you, it's one of our newest intelligence outfits. It's a brilliant collection of individuals from all over the world. These are the guys who, and women, by the way. It was headed by a woman.
Sure, but you said they're being told right now they're not going to turn Google into a gulag, and then what you... Yeah.
And the reason for that is there was a gentleman by the name of Keith Alexander, General Keith Alexander, whom I worked with, well, he was in G2, but he was head of the NSA. Now he has his own private consulting. But he asked a question that the National Geospatial Agency really had to answer an entity, and that was, what is the third dimension of the Internet? We know the ones, the zeros, but what is life within the Internet in its depth and horizontal levels? It's deep. How deep does it go? How far does it go? And a whole institution was created to answer that third question.
Well, it's an interface into human activity in the future, and so it's actually a nexus into the third dimension and above that. It's a giant brain melding machine.
Now you got it. Now we not only have the Internet, but we have AI, artificial intelligence, working on AI, artificial intelligence. We have quantum encryption, which is a new concept, but I kept saying it for months here and elsewhere, that basically we no longer just codify anything. We do it at a quantum level, and the ones who are doing this along with us are the Chinese. They're very good in quantum.
And I was about to say, how can the Democrats and these old thinkers with one-dimensional thinking, where they do A, not thinking about how it moves, know that other people like Trump and others now with their own instinct, but also with computers, can actually look forward 20 moves? In fact, it makes me feel pathetic that the globalists were in power this long when they're that pathetic. Why were we that weak to let them do this?
We weren't that weak. We basically had to respect the geriatric unit. You have Dianne Feinstein, 84. You have Soros, 87. You have Pelosi, 79. You have McCain, who's an idiot and a war criminal. I mean, this is what happened. It had to be cleaned out by the people of the United States. You and I could target them. You and I could go after them verbally, and then eventually they were spotted. But it's like anything else. A revolution takes place, but it's occurring much faster than you would have imagined. When we first started 17 years ago, you and I didn't know we would be on. Quite frankly, there were people who threatened me. The FBI gave me subpoenas where I had to show up before a prosecutor. You, in turn, you had to show up at court. So it was an endless series of fights that we had to live. They're basically a geriatric unit with very little memory and very little thinking capacity.
That's right, and they think they're going to whack us on the head, we're going to go away. It's the other way around.
It's the other way around. The more they hit us, the better it is, because it makes us more important. They created their own monster. Welcome.
That's right. We'll be back with your call. Stay with us. I want to be clear. The reason I brought this up for Dr. Steve Pieczenik is, he has some of the best sources out there. He's been so accurate over the 17 years I've been talking to him. Hard to believe it's been that long, since 2002. It was early 2002. I first started interviewing him. And he was saying Bin Laden was dead. Now they bring him out on ice later. And then I've talked to Navy SEALs and people that weren't blown up from Dev Group, and they just say that they're not going to talk, but yeah, it's all fake. But just to say stuff like that on air, it's really dangerous, so people know. But this was just handed to me. BuzzFeed News. How YouTube channel recommends and pushes users to the fringe. And then BuzzFeed, the people that gave me the PP dossier and all the rest of it, major Soros funded, say, look, related channels, INFOWARS.com, Alex Jones. Now, they've got a shadow ban still. They're blocking us because there's a mutiny in YouTube. But imagine them openly calling. The old Google algorithm is what's most popular is what's promoted. It's called YouTube. Now, for a while, YouTube's gotten rid of the original algorithm, and it basically broke it. That's why the search results didn't work for the last few months. Now they're kind of in between it, bringing it back. There is a war inside it. Pieczenik knows the details from his sources in agencies. He obviously won't tell us, but he did say this is going to happen. But there's 2 points here. Then we're going to calls. There's the announcement that I need to be banned from the internet and deplatformed, that it's bad to let people see my search results, when Google's unrecognizable to what it used to be just a year ago. It's just horrible. It's kind of gone back a little bit. You can see their testing. When Bing and things like Microsoft are much better. I got to know, because you did call it. You said it's going to be restored. It's not going to happen. It's going to be cleaned up. There's a mutiny inside it. It's Obama stay-behinds. They're being cleaned out. It is admitted in QTEL and the NASA bases and all of it that, Google was founded based with NSA technology. It's a public-private partnership for national security. I get it. And it was a DARPA projection. That's actually in the white papers. People don't really see that, but that's admitted. So I knew when you said that days before it was admitted that there was some historical accuracy. But then when it happened and we got restored, and it's taken them a month to go through Natural News and thousands of other sites and restore them. Somebody restores them, then somebody goes in and deletes the subscribers. Somebody puts the subscribers back in. When you've got an infrastructure this big, this is a crazy civil war inside Google. So what can you tell us about the civil war inside Google? This is just intriguing.
What's really happening inside Google is that they're going to be losing a lot of their clients as well as the cash flows. What happened when Zuckerberg came and testified in Congress, it basically tanked Facebook in terms of values. If you look at Google, and its accumulation distribution in the stock market, it has what we call a D to E rating, meaning that nobody wants to accumulate the stock, and it's basically a dead asset.
And isn't that a warning to them for their treason, just like Trump just drove down Amazon $34 billion?
Well, that's exactly the point. But when you don't have investors, particularly the big investors on Wall Street and elsewhere, or I play the
investors don't want to invest in authoritarianism. It sucks.
No, and that's the point. Not only don't they want to invest in authoritarianism, they know this is antiquated. They know that there are other algorithms that are coming in at a much faster rate where we can break Google, we can break Facebook, we can break any one of these things, and they know it. The YouTube and Google province really belongs.
So Trump gave them chances to move forward. They didn't, and now they're going to be put to death politically.
I think so, politically and economically, because Zuckerberg should have been thrown out. If you were in any way part of the Sandy Road or Sandy Hill hedge fund, I would have thrown out Zuckerberg, even though he's the majority holder. He's a disaster.
By the way, as a psychiatrist, you're not under the Goldwater rule supposed to diagnose him, but he is one of the weirdest. I mean, a top actor couldn't act like a robot like him.
He's a narcissistic little Jewish boy who copied a lot of things, went out of his way to get a movie called Social Network, was not that brilliant, created a story and a narrative, like 100 of these guys. Basically, he's not the genius. The genius were the people in the CIA and DARPA when they saw this in the 50s and 60s.
No, my dad saw it in when he was just at UT in the Plan 2 when he was in high school. And they were showing him CD-ROMs and social networks and InfoG and everything.
All you have in Zuckerberg is a promoter, a self-promoter. He didn't do anything that was unusual. He didn't create anything that was unusual. If you look at Social Network, you'll see where he stole a lot of things where, in fact, he's a faulted character. It's the same
I'm not bragging about my dad, but he always talks about the thing he was most proud of was he was like a senior in high school. He wrote a paper called Information Energy or InfoG that then got snatched up, he said, by DARPA, and they asked him never to talk about it. But I mean, I'm sure other people were simultaneously saying the same thing, but my dad was talking about social networks in like 1967.
Well, the only thing he should have done is while he was a dentist, he should have started up a company in Austin, and I wish him the best. But the genes clearly come through to you. You're bright. You see it. You understand.
Well, enough about me. I'm just saying, I want to know why they're attacking us.
It's not that. You have to understand, it's not just you. I compare you to the left and to Congress. They're dead. They're brain dead. They don't get any of this. They don't understand it. They sit among themselves. It's like a circle of geriatric patients talking about nonsense, whereas we're on the outside accumulating information at a very fast rate, and they cannot absorb it. There's no way they can.
Well, that's why they got rid of HUMAT, is because they didn't want us to have the original HUMAT, and then they rely only on the technocracy, which there's so much info, it blinds them.
Well, but also they didn't have a character like Alex Jones to be able to articulate the narrative with passion, humor, and zeal, and more importantly, resistance. That's the one thing that you cannot see on television. It's the one thing you don't see in the movie business. It's the one thing you don't see in politics. They stay there for a few years to get their pension, and then they leave. You don't go into politics if you're an entrepreneur, you're a creator like yourself, you want to break all the paradigms, or at least have an American revolution. You don't go into politics for that. That's basically...
Well, yeah, I saw the socialist, globalist dirtbag revolution and had to resist it, just like our audience does, and they're awesome for holding Dr. Steve Pieczenik. StevePieczenik.com. Almost find his books there on the site. Really smart guy, and he's not BS, and he's got the connections. So many times, he's just got amazing info for us. So does Zach, who I want to get back on as soon as possible. We know his identity, great info as well. Catherine in Canada, thanks for holding, and then Carlos and others. You're on the air worldwide during the 34-hour emergency broadcast.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Pretty crazy world. How are you doing? I'm glad that Trump's backing off World War III talk.
Yeah, no, I think that's all theater, actually. But I have a point to do about Comey. So I just want to make a point about if the Russians were trying to blackmail the incoming president, why wouldn't the FBI and Comey himself do everything in their power to protect him from the blackmail, but instead use it, intimidate him with the information? That just blows up the entire...
Yeah, if that was true, that's collusion with the Russians. If the president really did it as a national security, the CIA would be trying to block that and deal with it instead of the FBI using it. And, of course, they funded the whole fake thing. Dr. Pieczenik?
Useless organization. I told you 30 years ago, I had to come in under the Carter administration to take over the Hanafi muzzle, where the FBI didn't have the profile, couldn't repel, didn't know what to do, and they were just totally useless. It's an organization that should be shut down by Trump automatically. He should fire Mueller. He should fire Rodenstein. He should shut down the FBI, reconstruct it, or leave it there. We have the ATF. We have Homeland Security.
Well, I was about to say, let's let her finish. They have built Mueller up like he's the shadow president, and they're rogue completely. Trump has a responsibility to fire him. I know people say, well, don't do that. It makes him look like he's guilty. At a certain point, where are the indictments? What's up with Rosenstein? Where is the stuff with Mueller getting in trouble for covering up for Hillary? I mean, it's ridiculous. We did not elect Robert Mueller.
I agree with you. That's why I was asking to fire him years ago. The man is corrupt. He was compromised in 9/11. He took over the FBI a week before 9/11. This was a former Vietnam War hero who compromised himself and made it disgusting. He basically is corrupt.
And remember, the deputy director tried to stop it, and then he took a job at the World Trade Center and died the day of the attack.
Well, there was another person, unfortunately, who died, who was a CIA operative named John Neal, and he knew exactly what was going on, and he died there. They had no...
Yeah, that's John O'Neill, the deputy head of counterterrorism for the FBI, but you're now saying he was CIA.
Yes.
Yeah. So the whole point is that that's how crazy this is. There are good people in the government. We're here talking to Steve Pieczenik. This segment, the next, going right to your calls. I just wanted to ask Dr. Pieczenik of StevePieczenik.com. Looking at this, the Democrats are #hunt Republicans. We've got documents that we've confirmed are real. George Soros hasn't denied them. His son hasn't denied them, that they're trying to cause race war, civil war on the streets. They've not been successful with how they work with blue city Democrat police departments, where they're knocking windows out and burning trash cans, but it's scripted. They have a threat continuum. It's all planned out. They're trying to get other people to get violent. We published that months ago. I mean, this is serious criminal activity. So I get we don't want to be too precipitous to clean them out. I'm not an authoritarian. I'm a libertarian. But I feel derelict watching them do this and them trying to gear up a coup and just all the wild-eyedness that's going on and trying to sabotage the economy. And we have a clear and present danger, a book you wrote, turned into a movie, here in this country. And I don't want to underestimate these people. That's all I'm saying. What keeps you awake at night, Dr. Pieczenik? I mean, I know we're winning overall Americana, free market, worldwide, but they could grab victory from the jaws of defeat. And I don't want to also give them ideas, because I used to think they were smart. I realize they're just dumb, but they're like cancer, willing to take over. That's why they're in power. But how are they going to strike back? What do we do if they start killing people or they stage a bunch more false flags? We know they're doing that. We know they're winding it up, preparing it, lining the people up, standing down. I mean, and they're so pissed we're exposing that. That tells me that they want me discredited ahead of the next narrative they launch. They don't even get to that. People tune in even more. They're just so, they have this, I hear the psychiatrists, this narcissism where they think they're invincible, but that's their weakness and their strength, isn't it?
No, it's more of their weakness. It's not even an issue of narcissism. It's grandiosity that really has no basis in reality. All they're doing is the tighter they become on the target, which is yourself, me, or Trump.
Target psychosis.
I'm sorry?
Target psychosis?
Well, we say your fixation on a target. That's basically what we say in the military. So you miss the entire target. And at the same time, while they're focusing in, they're being on Trump, he's being able to retaliate so fast that and it's not only the Democrats. What he's done is to make sure Ryan is
left. Why is Paul Ryan leaving? I forgot that question.
Yeah, I mean, this is not an accident.
You predicted 6 months ago that he'd be going.
Correct. And I said there would be 20 to 25 different Republicans, so-called Republicans, who are moderates or didn't support Trump, have no idea what he's doing, have no idea where the Republican, and they're leaving. And that was part of his agenda, except he didn't say it outright. He said, you're either with me or you're against me. But the tighter you come in on him, the more effective he becomes. And that's why you, myself, and I, what keeps me up at night? Not really very much. I go up the next day and I say, okay, is my garbage can gone?
No, I get it. Here's the thing. We can all put a good face on it, and things are going our way. The worm's turning, but they are bullying the hell out of individuals. This bad. I mean, I want to look at the negative position here.
The negative position is basically the repetition again and again. It's almost repetition compulsion of a neurotic or a psychotic person. They repeat the same thing.
It's a mantra. There's a mantra.
Correct. It's a mantra. He's lazy. He's tired. He doesn't know what to do. It was in the New York Times. He's crazy. He's stupid.
He needs to not listen to that. He needs to stop reading the New York Times.
Not really, because what happens in turn, it's really paradoxical intention. I'd like him to listen to it because what he does
it makes him come back stronger.
He comes back stronger, and then you see the real Twitter war where he comes in and he will devastate people right and left, and they don't really understand what happened. So they think he's uncontrollable. No, he's very controllable. It's only he has to depend on what time he does it. He has to listen to his friends, or as Landowski and Stone have said, let him be Trump. He's going to be what he is. He built $1 billion business. He went out of his way to build us an ice.
And he did it his way. We'll be back. You cannot give the globalists a bigger black eye and stand up against them than supporting free speech, because they see this show and our guests as a constellation of resistance and information that's so close to what's really going on. Not that we're perfect. We all see through rose-colored glasses, that they want it shut down. And I agree with Pieczenik. The one-dimensional thing of crushing us when we already did our job. We still want to be here and still want to help and all the rest of it, but there's a real satisfaction in being the rock that hits the pond, because your parents and your ancestors and the culture got you there. They threw you. You hit, and then the waves have already gone back and bounced back, and by then they realize that you see 100 more rocks about to hit. They don't even see the 100 other rocks in the air. They're worried about crushing the spot where the rock hit 23 years ago, and they don't even get that already it's an exponential wave. That, quite frankly, that wave, Dr. Pieczenik, we'll go to call, scares me because of the unknown things that are going to happen and how the entrenched bureaucracy is going to deal with a true renaissance 1,000 times the magnitude of the one with the Gutenberg Bible 560 years ago.
Let me put it this way. You and I have had lawsuits. I've had them since I left medical school in 1968. So in every business I was in, real estate, books, movies, they've always been lawyers. So one of the signs of success that I usually say is when I have my lawyers, I'm being quite successful because I have to fund them. The notion of the law or legality is what allows you and me to really go into a kind of a mutual relationship with the adversary, where we can tone down the rhetoric, tone down the emotions, and allow the kabuki, whether it's right or wrong, the kabuki of so-called justice to play out. So I have been there with you. I'm still there with you, filing lawsuits against the mines, against water companies, against all types of things. But I haven't stopped doing that since I was in my 20s or 30s. And that's not including what I did in operational field, because I never used lawyers there. But in a way, the point of success, and it's ironic, is to have these lawsuits and continuously fight back. The lawyers love this. Unfortunately, that's the way our system works. But it works. When you push back, the system doesn't want to continue to keep paying and hitting Alex Jones. That's the same way I would go all the time. I'd have to hire a lawyer in Hollywood, a lawyer in the publishing industry, a lawyer here. Everywhere I looked, I had a lawyer. But for the most part, they are your allies in order to create a new narrative.
Well, I gotta say, it's the Republican lawyers that are always the good ones, as the Democrats are the bad ones. I mean, more and more I realize that the Republican establishment's bad, but the Democrat lawyers are the scum of the earth. Carlos in Canada, you're on the air with Dr. Steve Pieczenik. Go ahead. Thanks for holding.
Thank you very much, Alex. It's a great pleasure to speak to both of you. Most informative and powerful analysis. I wanted to draw your attention to what is defined as the swamp. In my opinion, the problem in the United States, which President Trump can solve, not easily, but he is able to, is the problem of congressmen and senators who receive money from foreign powers indirectly through agencies and friends and so on, and are able to, without even reading the legislation, sometimes just pass it through, and, you know, even defiance of the
Exactly.
president.
The idea that Trump's a foreign power when it's the globalists that have sold us out is asinine. So what do we do? How do we identify the swamp? He didn't hire any lobbyists. How does Trump go completely ape and start indicting a bunch of these people?
Well, it's a matter of democracy, information, a matter of informing the public as to who's taking money from where. Some of these people are room temperature IQ. I mean, it's
Well, they're
insane.
so dumb. The U.S. had half the world industrial power 30, 40 years ago. They sold it out to corporations for little nickel and dime power when we could have projected freedom worldwide, built everybody up, and been in charge of it all. They literally gave away the perfect free market system of world government. The globalists, are the biggest idiots on the planet.
Yes, and as it turns out, you've got a situation where a foreign leader of could be Saudi Arabia or Israel can go to the Senate, to the Congress, get standing ovations, you know, to the embarrassment of the president, to the embarrassment of the community they're supposed to serve, and turn around and ignoring things like the Symington amendment, which prohibits countries from giving money.
Absolutely. What about boomeranging around? Like Trump let the submariner off that showed a 50-year-old submarine. It was no big deal. It was all bull. They found it in a landfill, clearly a setup. He pardoned that guy because he's showing how Hillary did 10,000 times that. What about boomeranging back? I mean, why won't the Justice Department, Dr. Pieczenik, go after all the clear sellouts to foreign powers that Hillary got caught in? Why? Like you said, why does he fire Rosenstein and these people?
I don't know why he doesn't fire them. I can tell you I wouldn't trust them because most of them are bureaucrats who have really no vested interest in serving our country. What they basically do, along with the politician, is they're concerned about their own viability or their own livelihood. If you look at a congressman or senator...
But don't they get, if they bet on a country like this with the resources and the culture, they get everything by betting on the country instead of worrying about their own stupid asses?
They're not looking at the United States. They're looking at their own specific amount of money that they receive, their salary.
No, I agree. They think Trump's mentally ill because he cares about America. It's America. It is exceptional, idiots. It's the Renaissance. We have to bet on it, or the Chi-Coms or some other. We're going to do one more segment, and then Joel Gilbert's coming up. Thank you, Carlos. But when I am openly saying that humanity needs a world government that doesn't have governmental power, it needs a system where people come together, they discuss, they make unilateral deals country to country. That's the next step in humanity, but not some secret authoritarian thing where corporations that are greedy run it, or you get rid of sovereignty. I see it as America 1776, worldwide is what I call it. And true free market and true open societies, countering George Soros' open society that's a counterfeit and a fraud of that. So I made that point that America, with all its wealth, all its power, because it was the most free country in the world, had the whole future ahead of it, but the robber barons leveraged us out. The smarts of the yeoman farmer and the folks working in factories couldn't translate into the robber barons and the big elites. And so we've now seen the globalists last half century, but that thing is coming to an end, and they're panicking. Dr. Pieczenik, we'll go to these calls right now, but briefly, guy called up and said, "Oh, Alex, the globalists aren't losing. We need to get violent." But the guy's always calling for the violence. They're not leading the violence. I really think the prognosis is good for nationalism and free market. After all, it works so much better than tyranny and communism and socialism and authoritarianism. Really, if we just promote it and expose it, don't you think we'll win?
I think we're winning already. The fact is, look at the economy. It's been on a roar. I mean, we have really had an incredible growth. We've had the lowest unemployment rate in years. We have been able to finish a war in Iraq and in Syria and pretty much in Afghanistan. I mean, we are in great shape. The real issue for the globalists is that they do not understand what America's about. Soros is what we call the Judenrat Hungarian Jew, who really is not relevant to us. He was a traitor to other people. I mean, when you are basically compromised in your character, the rest of your life you're compromised.
Well, but I mean, again, then, as a psychiatrist studying his activities, what is his problem?
His problem is, I could give you, your guys would, I could give you a psychiatric diagnosis, but he's pretty much of an a-hole. I mean, that's what I would say as his diagnosis. He's a raving a-hole. I know, I've met him. I find him totally ignorant and totally unpleasant, but he's not the relevant part. What's relevant is for you to maintain and for us to maintain where the country is going at a very fast rate. We're starting to get millennials into the political system who watch you, who listen to you, whether they're the left or the right. They're coming in and they're beginning to understand, number one, you serve the country, however you want to serve it. Number two, you then come back and serve it in a civilian form. Number three, you get involved in local politics. As LBJ, it's always local. The Soroses and the Pelosi's and the Feinstein, they're fossils. They're
No, I agree. Their huge exhibition of energy is their death throes. That is the truest statement today.
correct.
David in Oklahoma, you're on the air. Go ahead. Thanks for holding.
Hey, yes, sir. I want you to know that you have a great following within the 18-wheeler community, and we really appreciate the information that we get. And I'm an avid fan of the Brain Force, the Alpha Male. I've used many of your products, and I tell you what, I have conversations. I wear your T-shirts, and I wore one. The Hillary for Prison had George Soros on the back of it, and I'm waiting there to pay for stuff, and these drivers come up to start talking about George Soros. I mean, we know, and I mean, there's so many drivers that follow you. And
what is it, Dr. Pieczenik, about truck drivers? They seem to be not left or right, but just super informed patriots. I'm not just saying that. Truck drivers out of any group.
I've invested in a lot of truck drivers. Number one, believe it or not, the truck drivers are very independent. What they really do is they own their own trucks, and what they depend on is a very sophisticated information system that tells them where to pick up the load, how much the load is, where to take the load. So they are very sophisticated business people who know exactly what they need, what they want to do, and what it takes. So this is an example. This gentleman is a great example of why America's great. Trucks are moving everywhere over the United States.
By the way, I knew what you were going to say. I remember like 5 years ago, you said the truck driver is the archetype of America. Correct. I remember you saying that.
That's correct. And I believe it. They have become the archetype of America because that's their independent freedom. They drive when they want to. They pick up the loads they want to. They know where to go. When they go over to another place 1,000 miles away, they have another load. They bring it back. They know what the shipment is. They know how much it costs. You can't get more sophisticated than a truck driver.
Well, it's like a land-based merchant marine. It's an army.
You got it. Exactly right. And they have to deal with sophisticated internet capacities. Now, do you think our politicians know anything about it? No. Basically, the truckers are the most amazing business people I've ever met. And by the way, they're the most courteous on the road, and they're formidable. They're the ones who make the road go.
Well, I was just asking why. I've been on the air 23 years. It's the truckers of any group. We should make the show more about truckers.
That's correct.
They are the most active patriotic group. It's crazy, other than veterans.
Well, because they are like you and I. They're business people. If you haven't, everybody says you got to go to college. No, you don't have to go to college. You have to understand what it is that you can do. And if you're a trucker, you go to school, you learn how to drive the truck. It's a very sophisticated system. But at the same time, you take the risk. You take the load. You take the upside. You take the leverage. You know the gas. You know the wear out. You know the depreciation. You know the length of time that the truck can go in. And
it's that process that's empowering to the individual.
It's totally empowering, and it's empowering to our country. The more trucks we have, the more trade we have, and you can see it east, west, and north, south. I mean, I live right in the middle of Florida, and you see trucking going from Jacksonville to Gainesville. It's constant, and we're building more roads. So the infrastructure project is the next thing Trump is going to talk about. Who else is talking about it? I haven't heard a president talk about that yet. So the trucker is the penultimate American entrepreneur.
All right. God bless you, David. Tom Clancy died mysteriously. Well, I don't know if that's true, but we know that Steve Pieczenik was good friends with him. In Massachusetts, you're on the air with the co-author of many of Tom Clancy's books, Dr. Steve Pieczenik. Go ahead. Well, there you go. You had your question about Tom Clancy died mysteriously. Yeah, go ahead. You're on the air.
Thank you, Alex. Big fan. Yes, well, I haven't been able to get too many direct sources. I found out kind of late towards the end of the election that he died. Couldn't find any real coverage on it. Was asking if the doctor...
It did get unusually low coverage for one of the best-selling authors in U.S. history. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I think the main reason for that is he's essentially our first accepted leaker. You know, he taught the American people what really goes on with all those government dollars and all those programs, and truly a great American in my mind. But, yeah, I only found out through, following the rabbit hole of all the people who had died mysteriously, and, yeah, couldn't find any real solid coverage.
Well, one of his good friends is right here. Was there any hanky-panky or foul play or skullduggery with...
No. Tom was an unusually bright man, a very funny man, a very serious man when he had to write. We wrote together. We did a lot of things together. I can assure you he died a very dignified death, a very quiet death. I miss him very much. And the irony of all about Tom, although he wrote these brilliant books, was that he was one of the funniest men I had ever known. And he would always temper my laughter because I said, Tom, we really should be in the business of writing comedy and humor. And he said, no, that's much harder than you realize. So, no, we miss him. I can assure you he died a very dignified and honorable death. He's a great service to America, and he was a great American. I thank you for the question.
Any other questions, Nemo?
I would just like to say thank you to the doctor, and that I'll spread that to those of us that are skeptics and seekers. And please keep continuing to do what you do.
Sure, I don't get in his private life, but, I mean, didn't he smoke a lot of cigarettes?
Yes, I didn't want to get into that, but he did smoke a lot of cigarettes. There's a little story I had to kind of a sidebar when we were in Hollywood together and we were doing the 4-hour miniseries. He went around. I had to kind of hide some of the cigarettes around.
Was that Net Force?
Huh?
Was that Net Force?
Yeah, boy, you're that's amazing. Yes, that was Net Force, and we kind of had a game, and then he kind of picked up a few cigarettes in one place and then another place. And I said, well, you missed a couple of points. And then in the car, he just picked up all the cigarettes he had. And it's the kind of habit you really can't break. But he was a wonderful partner. I really enjoyed having him. And he had a great sense of humor, a great American. He really loved this country. And when we worked together, it was just a great pleasure. But unfortunately, he smoked a lot.
Well, I only started smoking in college when I would drink beer and stuff, and I didn't like it at first. And then all of a sudden, I caught myself about 8 years ago smoking a pack a day, and I went, when my 3-year-old daughter grabbed the cigarettes and threw it in the trash. That was it. But yeah.
If we can do any one thing, we have to warn our audience, please stop smoking. It really has a very deleterious effect on your body. When you come in the emergency room, we doctors know automatically. If you even tell us that you didn't smoke, we'll know that. And it has a deleterious effect. They put ammonia into the nicotine, so it's addictive. It's not just psychological.
That's right. It's a bunch of chemicals they get away with a grandfather. That's a great point.
That's correct.
They put all sorts of crap in there. Nemo, thank you. Jeff in Canada, you're on there with Dr. Steve Pieczenik. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Hey, I'm driving a truck up and down Vancouver Island today, and you sharing that segment earlier in the day about people getting chopped up and shot, and you broke my heart, man. I had to stop the truck and cry.
Well, you ought to have to watch the footage. I got tears in my eyes, and I made myself watch 2 hours of it in that office of Al-Qaeda and ISIS chopping up people and making people eat it before they blew their heads off, lining little kids off and laughing when they shot little girls in the head. That's the kind of footage that's been removed off YouTube most people haven't seen. And that's the satanic behavior of the jihadis. I don't know how they get those people so whacked out, but I mean, it's like watching Charlie Manson cut up, the lady he killed, but it's actually happening.
You know, I just thank God for INFOWARS and all the wonderful guests that you have on to be able to just bring that information that we'll never hear from MSM. And I just want to say, you know, I heard about this, the truck driver and the support. I just want to say from Canada, I want to just pledge to you today $100, and I want to just anybody within earshot of wanting to be free, because there's an international movement against us, freedom-loving, God-loving people. If you can hear this, support Alex, support the show, support the guests, because maybe you don't think you can afford $100, but if you can't afford to do that, can you afford to be without outlets like yours? And
well, I know this. I know this. I have so much faith in people that I'm super confident, but absolutely, I mean, we have the globalists after us. We have the worst people after us, and when you support us financially and get great products at the same time, it's seismic. That's why they hate free market, because free market, even if it's limited, gives people a manifestation of their will. They wanted books shut down. They wanted video shut down. They wanted no economy for us. Well, they failed, didn't they, Dr. Pieczenik?
They failed completely. Ironically, the man behind a lot of what happened in Arkansas was a man by the name of Sam Walton. If you look back at his history, he was in military intelligence. He was, in fact, in charge of the internment camps for the German Americans and the Italian Americans. And so what you had was an individual who already understood repression and suppression. As a result of that, he garnered a lot of money, I would say, from China or elsewhere, and then propagated this notion through the Clintons and others. But it's a very dangerous collusion that occurred between World War II intelligence reports and people and the ongoing representatives of the state. And if you see the movie by Tom Cruise, American Made, you're going to understand how the intelligence world or the deep state world under the Clintons worked against the interest of the United States. I strongly recommend that movie. I think it's on Amazon because
I'm not a big Cruise fan, but it's an excellent movie. I saw it, very historical, as you said. God bless you, Jeff. Thank you. Look, I'm out of time. Infowars.com, newswars.com. Again, just spread those links. That's the biggest thing you can do. StevePieczenik.com. 20 seconds, final comment.
I have full faith in you. I have full faith in the American public. I really appreciate the truckers of the United States, Canada, and elsewhere, and the Republic will survive and prosper. Be safe, and God bless.
That's right. It's true. These are the death throes, and some of us that are the focus of the death throes will not make it. But don't take that as a defeat. We are going to win. Nothing is going to stop us. We can't let these globalists run our lives.